Hello everyone and welcome to the second hour of moving charges and magnetism. In the first hour, we talked about the force acting on a charged particle when it moves in a magnetic field. In this hour, first we will talk about the force acting on a current carrying element when it is placed in a magnetic field. Then we will talk about the magnetic field created by a current carrying element. So without wasting time, let's start with the first thing, which is the force acting on a current carrying wire placed in magnetic field. Let's say we have a magnetic field into the plane of the screen and there is a current carrying wire. Now we understand that current is predominantly defined as the flow of positive charge. So if the positive charge goes towards right, the current is towards right. If the negative charge goes towards right, we say that the current is towards left. So if you have a current carrying wire carrying, let's say, current this way, you can think of it as if the positive charges are moving in the direction of current. And if these positive charges are moving, they will experience some force. In which direction? We know that the direction of magnetic force acting on a charge is given by Q into V cross B. So we need to align the fingers of right hand in direction of velocity and then curl the fingers towards the magnetic field. This gives us the direction of the force. So there will be some force here. But in the world of physics, whenever we define something, we define it for infinitely small. So we say that the infinitely small force acting on an infinitely small current carrying element, let's say out of the whole wire, we are just focusing on one small length dl. So we say that the infinitely small force acting equals to I into dl cross b. Do understand that the current here is a scalar quantity. So we have taken the infinitely small length vector. Now how to identify the infinitely small length vector? Let's focus on it. Let's say you have got this random shaped wire carrying some current. If we have placed this wire in a region of magnetic field, then what is the magnetic force acting on one small length of it? Let's say this infinitely small length of it. So you will say that the infinitely small length vector should have magnitude same as the infinitely small length and its direction should be along the string in the direction of current. So here we will say that the vector dl has the magnitude infinitely small dl and its direction is along the length of the wire in the direction in which the current flows. So as the current is scalar, we take an infinitely small length vector in the direction of current. As the current is a scalar, we take an infinitely small length vector in the direction of current. Now, before we move on, as I have said in the last hour, the most important thing in magnetism is the direction. So first, we need to focus on the direction. So I will take here some example in which I will tell you what is the direction of flow of current, what is the direction of magnetic field, and we will practice how to find the direction of force. So let's say they have given us current direction, magnetic field direction, and we need to find the force direction. The first case, the current is towards east and the magnetic field is upward. So the current is towards east and the magnetic field is upward. How will you find the direction of magnetic force acting on it? So we know that df equals to I into dl cross b. So we have to align the fingers of right hand in the direction of dl and dl is taken in the direction of flow of current. So since the current is towards east, align the finger of right hand in direction of east and then make it curl upwards. This is curling towards north. This is curling down. We need to curl it upwards. So this is curling upwards. When I curl it upwards, the thumb point towards me. That is coming out of the screen and this direction is south. So you will say if a current carrying wire has got current towards east in a region of space where the magnetic field is upwards, then the direction of magnetic force acting on this current carrying wire has to be towards south. Next, if you have got, let's say, current towards north, current is going towards north and the magnetic field is downward. So the current is going from you towards the screen and the direction of magnetic field is down. What will be the direction of magnetic force? So align the fingers of right hand in the direction of dl and dl has to be taken in direction of current, that is towards north, and then curl the fingers downward. So when you do north cross down, you get west. Next example, if let's say current is towards up, the current is upwards and the direction of magnetic field is towards north. So current is upward, magnetic field is towards north. I have to align the fingers of right hand in the direction of current and then curl the fingers towards north, and this gives me the direction of magnetic force. So up cross north gives me west, so the force has to be towards west. Next, If let's say the current is towards east and the direction of magnetic field is towards north, so east cross north, the direction of force will be again up. Next, if you have got, let's say, current towards west and the direction of magnetic field towards south, so I have to align the fingers of right hand towards west. This is curling downward, this is curling towards north, and I have to curl it towards south. So when I do west cross south, the direction of force comes out to be upward. Now bachcho, here sometimes they won't mention that the magnetic field is towards north because they will be talking about Earth's magnetic field. So they just might say as a current carrying wire carries current in upward direction. And you have to understand that the Earth's magnetic field, if not mentioned, you have to take it towards north. So if the Earth's magnetic field is towards north and the direction of current is upward, the direction of force on this current carrying element has to be towards west. Now this is the case when you have got an infinitely small length dl, but there is a special case that has to be understood, and be very cautious when I am explaining this second case. The force on a current carrying wire when placed in a uniform magnetic field. When the magnetic field is uniform, it means that it has the same magnitude and same direction everywhere. Then you can write, rather than dF equals to I into dl cross B, you can write the force acting on the current carrying wire equals to I into L cross B. Now do understand, the current carrying wire do not always have to be a straight line. You might have a randomly shaped wire carrying current this way, let's say I, from a point A initial to a point B final. We need to understand what to take L as. We say that L is the effective length from the initial to the final. So rather than thinking of this randomly shaped wire, think of a straight wire joining the initial point from where the current enters into the wire to the final point up to where the current is going, and then take it as your length vector. So rather than thinking of the whole loop, think of this effective length. So again repeating, for a current carrying wire placed in a uniform magnetic field, when the field strength is constant, then you will say that the force equals to I into L cross B, where L is the effective length. Effective length should be taken from initial to final. Now let's practice out some examples to understand this pattern. So the example goes like, let's say you have got this uniform magnetic field going into the screen. And let's say in this uniform magnetic field, we have placed a semicircular loop. Let's say this semicircular loop carries a current I, and this semicircular loop has a radius equals to R. Question is, what is the magnetic force acting on this semicircular loop? So if you think using dF equals to I into dl cross B, then for each small length, you will have to think dl, what is the direction of forces. Now do understand, every time you take one small length dl, the direction of dl has to be same as the direction of current flowing in that part. So in this part, the current flowing will be here. So if you think of the direction of force dl cross B, it comes out to be radially outward. If you think of this part, dl cross B, again radially outward. If you think of this part, dl cross B, again radially outward. So similarly, on each small element here on the wire, the force will be radially outward. And then to find the resultant of all these forces, I will have to go at some angle theta, think of one small element, subtending an angle d theta at the center, write the force on it, take its vertical component because I know that the resultant of all these forces is going to be vertical, and then integrate to get the result. That is one approach. Or remember that when the field is uniform, you can simply write the force equals to I into L cross B. Beta, what is L? The effective length. For this semicircular wire, you will take the effective length to be nothing but a vector from initial position to the final position up to where the current is going. So think of only a single length here. Now this length will be the length of the diameter, which will be nothing 2r. And rather than visualizing the force on the semicircle, just visualize the force on a current carrying wire of length 2r carrying a current I this way. Now this single wire, straight wire, is the effective of this semicircular loop. Now what will be the magnetic force on this single wire? So we know that the magnetic force is given by I into length effective cross B. Now, the magnitude of this force will be I into length effective into B into sine of the angle between the length effective and the magnetic field. The length effective is in the plane of the screen and the magnetic field is perpendicular to the plane of the screen. So the angle between them is 90 degree and sine 90 becomes 1. So what you get here is simply I into length effective, which is 2R into the magnetic field strength B. Even from integration, you get the same result. So it's better not to integrate and to use the length effective method. So here you will say that I will think of the length effective as 2R and the force will be I into 2R cross B upwards. So I into 2R into B will be the force acting on this semicircular wire. Now let's see the next example to understand it better. Let's say you have got this current carrying wire which represents the two sides of a rectangle. So this is a current carrying wire carrying, let's say, current I. Let's say that this length is B and this length is L. Now what will be the magnetic force acting on this wire? So you will say, sir, here I do not have to do integration. I can either look at the force acting on this part and then I can look at the force acting on this part and then I can add up the two forces. So first of all, let's see the force acting on this part. On this part, you will say the angle between the direction of current in the plane of the screen and magnetic field is 90. So the magnetic force acting on this much part only will be I into length B into magnetic field B into sine of the angle between length and magnetic field, which is 90. So sine 90 becomes 1. What will be the direction? I into dl cross B. So the direction of force will be towards left and this force will be IBB. On the second part, the force will be ILB. In which direction? Align the finger of right hand in the direction of current, cross B. So the force comes out to be upwards and the force comes out to be ILB. So you will say the force on this total wire is the resultant of these two forces, a force of IBB towards left and a force of ILB upwards. So the resultant will be nothing but under root of IBB whole square plus ILB whole square, and you can take I and B outside, so you get IB times under root of B square plus L square, right? Or better, you can simply use the effective length method. Just think of current going straight from the initial point to the final point. Now this is your effective length vector. And from Pythagoras theorem, you can say that this length will be nothing but under root of L square plus B square. And the magnetic force acting on it will be I into L cross B somewhere here. And this magnetic force will be nothing but the current into the length effective under root of L square plus B square into the magnetic field strength. Do understand, again, this length effective is in the plane of the screen and magnetic field perpendicular to the plane of the screen. So the angle between the length effective and magnetic field is 90 degree and sine 90 becomes 1. So you simply get I into under root of L square plus B square into B. Now let's say you have a current carrying wire which carries current in the shape of a wave. Now for this one complete wave, how will you write the magnetic force? Sir, still the same thing. Do not think of the curved part, think of the effective length. So if you think of the effective length, that will be nothing but one wavelength. And rather than thinking on force acting on every small part here, just think of the force acting on this effective length. So if this effective length has a magnitude lambda, the force will be nothing but I, the current strength, into the effective length lambda into B, as the angle between the effective length and magnetic field is 90 degree. So such an easy job it makes. Do understand that we can use that F equals to I into L cross B only when the field strength is constant. Same magnitude, same direction. Now this brings up a special case, and this is no general special case, it's a very special case. What if we have a current carrying closed loop? For a current carrying closed loop, what will you take the effective length to be? Here I have drawn a triangle, but you can think even of a square or a pentagon or any random shape. So if you have current carrying closed loop, how will you take the effective length? Sir, to get the effective length, just join the initial to final, initial to final, initial to final. But for a loop, Which one is initial, which one is final. So sir, treat any point as initial and then look at the final point, which is the same point. So the length effective for this case becomes 0. As the length effective for a closed current carrying loop placed in a uniform magnetic field is 0, the force comes out to be 0. And this is a really special case. You must remember it. So remember that the net magnetic force on a current carrying loop placed in a uniform magnetic field is 0. The net magnetic force on a current carrying loop placed in a uniform magnetic field is 0. So this is really important case. Now based on this case, let's understand a little bit more, but first a question. The question goes like, you have got this circular current carrying loop placed in a uniform magnetic field. If I ask you what is the magnetic force acting on this current carrying loop, your answer should come within a fraction of a second, and you should say, if we have a current carrying loop placed in a uniform magnetic field, the length effective will be 0, so the magnetic force has to be 0, sir. But the question here is something else. Question is, determine the tension developed in the loop. What? Determine the tension developed in the loop. So why there will be a tension developed in the loop? Because this magnetic field tries to expand the loop. Sir, how can you say? Look for one small part of the loop. Let's say I focus on this small part. For this small part, the current is here. Yes. So dl is here. So dl cross b, you get the force to be radially outward, df. Similarly, on this small part, you will get radially outward df. This small part radially outward, and on each small part, you will get a radially outward force. Even on this part, do it. dl cross b. The force comes out to be downward, which is again radially outward. So for each small part, you get a radially outward force. And all these radially outward magnetic forces are trying to increase the size of the loop. So as to maintain the shape, a tension is developed in the loop, and your mission is to determine that tension in the loop. So sir, how to find it? It's super easy. Only look at one half of the loop. Either look at the left half or the right half or the upper half or the lower half. For the sake of understanding, I am looking at the left half of the loop. If we just look at the left half of the loop, what will be the forces acting on this left half? So for the left half, you will say current is going this way. So the effective length will be this length 2r. So the magnetic force will be I into 2r cross b here. So the magnetic force will be I into 2r times b. And due to the other half loop, the right half loop, there will be force of tension here and here. If this left half is in equilibrium, then the net force on it has to be 0. So the force towards left, which is the magnetic force, should be equal to the force towards right, which is the sum of these two forces of tension. So you will write I into 2r into b equals to 2t, or the tension comes out to be simply IRB. So let's do it one more time. So just look at one half of the loop. If you visualize the forces acting on only one half of the loop, there will be a magnetic force that will be I into 2r into b, and there will be force of tension due to the other half. For this half of the loop to be in equilibrium, you will say that the force towards right 2t has to be equal to the force towards left, which is I into 2r into b. Cancel out 2 with 2, you get the tension to be nothing but IRB. Super easy. Now let's continue and talk more about a current carrying loop placed in a uniform magnetic field. So torque on a current carrying loop placed in a uniform magnetic field. We have just learned that if we have a current carrying loop placed in a uniform magnetic field, then the effective length for this current carrying loop comes out to be 0. So the force comes out to be 0. Now I want to emphasize a little bit further here. The force comes out to be 0, yes. The force comes out to be 0 independent of the shape of the loop, the size of the loop, the strength of the current in the loop. So if you have got a current carrying loop placed in a uniform magnetic field, then independent of the shape of the loop, size of the loop, the amount of current in the loop, the magnetic force comes out to be 0 because the length effective is 0. So you will say the net force on a current carrying loop in a uniform magnetic field is 0. Now you have learned something like this for something else. It wasn't magnetic field, it was electric field. On which thing, when placed in a uniform electric field, the net force is zero. So when you place a dipole in uniform electric field, when you place a dipole in uniform electric field, irrespective of the dipole moment, irrespective of the orientation, irrespective of the separation between the charges, given that if the electric field strength is constant, if the electric field is uniform, then the electric force acting on the dipole is zero, irrespective of orientation, right? So do understand that a current carrying loop acts like a magnetic dipole. A current carrying loop is as good as a magnetic dipole. Is as good as a magnetic dipole. And just like when you have placed an electric dipole in a uniform electric field, it experiences zero force. In the same way, when you place a current carrying loop, which is nothing but a magnetic dipole in a uniform magnetic field, it experiences no net force. But after teaching you this, that when you place an electric dipole in a uniform electric field, it experiences zero force, I taught you, but it experiences a torque. And the torque acting on the electric dipole when placed in a uniform electric field is given by P cross E. Similarly, the torque acting on a current carrying loop, which is nothing but a magnetic dipole when placed in a uniform magnetic field, is given by M cross B. What is E? Electric field. What is B? Magnetic field. What is P? Electric dipole moment. What is M? Magnetic dipole moment. So remember that the torque acting on a current carrying loop, which is nothing but a magnetic dipole when placed in a uniform magnetic field, is given by M cross P. Do not worry, we will define M as we have defined dipole moment. To define dipole moment, I said that if you have got negative charge and positive charge, such that the position vector of positive charge with respect to negative charge is R, then we say that the electric dipole moment is given by QR, right? So we will now try to find the magnetic dipole moment. Now beta, understand that here, just the way a freely suspended electric dipole always try to align itself in the direction of electric field. A freely suspended electric dipole always try to align itself in the direction of electric field. Similarly, a freely suspended magnetic loop turns so as to align its magnetic moment in the direction of magnetic field. I will talk on this a little bit later, but first we need to define the term called magnetic moment. So now let's talk about the term magnetic moment. The symbol used for magnetic moment is M. We are saying that a current carrying loop is nothing but a magnetic dipole and there is a magnetic moment associated with it. So if you have a current carrying loop and let's say this current carrying loop has some random shape and it carries a current I, then the magnetic moment associated with this current carrying loop, the magnetic moment, which is a vector quantity, is given by NIA. What is N? The number of turns in the coil. So if you have got 5 turns in this coil, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then the number of turns are 5. What is I? Current in the loop. What is A? The area vector. So we say that the magnetic moment is given by NIA. Notice that the number of turns and the current both are positive scalar. So the direction of magnetic moment is same as the direction of area vector. But sir, I never understood how to write area vector. See beta, area vector when I say, it means that you need to write two things, magnitude and direction. Yes sir. The magnitude of area vector has to be same as the actual magnitude of area enclosed within the loop. So if you have got, let's say, a square loop of side length A, you will say that the magnitude of area vector is A square. If you have got a circular loop of radius R, then you will say that the magnitude of area vector is pi R square. So this is how we complete the magnitude part. Now comes the direction part. For the direction part, we use the right hand thumb rule. If let's say the current is in the loop as shown here, so you will say that this current is clockwise. So curl the finger of right hand in the sense of current in the loop. If the current in the loop is clockwise, curl the finger of right hand clockwise. When you curl the finger of right hand clockwise, you can see that your thumb points into the screen, right? And this is the direction of area vector. So if you have a current carrying loop, let's say carrying current anti-clockwise, then you will say that the direction of area vector has to be coming out of the plane of the screen towards you. Now let's understand further. The direction of area vector is found using the right hand thumb rule. Curl the fingers of right hand in the sense of current. If the current is clockwise, curl them clockwise. If the current is anti-clockwise, curl them anti-clockwise. The direction of thumb gives the direction of area vector, which is same as the direction of magnetic moment. So magnetic moment equals to number of turns times current in the loop times its area vector. To determine the direction of area vector, which is same as the direction of magnetic moment, curl the fingers of right hand in the sense of current and your thumb points in the direction of area vector, which is same as the direction of magnetic moment. So let's move on and do a question to understand the magnetic moment better. Let's say you have got these two loops, one in the shape of a circle carrying current I placed in the xy plane, and another in the shape of a square carrying current I placed in the yz plane. The question is, find the magnetic moment of the two loops. So first of all, let's focus on the circular loop. So sir, the formula of magnetic moment tells me that the magnetic moment vector is Ni area vector. The number of turns here is 1, the current is I. Now I just need to focus on area vector. Area vector, I need two things, magnitude and direction. The magnitude will be same as the magnitude of circle pi r square, and the direction I will get using the right hand thumb rule. In this particular loop, you can see that the current is clockwise. So curl the fingers of right hand in the clockwise sense. Where does your thumb point? Into the screen. Into the screen means that your thumb points in the direction of negative z. So you will say that the direction is nothing but minus k cap. So this is your magnetic moment, number of turns 1, current is I, area vector is pi r square minus k cap. So you will say, due to the circular loop placed in the xy plane, the magnetic moment is number of turns 1 into the current I into the area vector, which is pi r square times minus k cap. Now let's write the magnetic moment associated with this square. You will say that, sir, it's easy. The number of turn is 1, the current is I, the area vector, the magnitude is a square, it's a square. And to determine the direction, curl the finger of right hand in the sense of current. Understand that x is towards your right, y is upward in the plane of the screen, and z is coming out of the screen towards you. So this square loop is placed in the YZ plane. Now you need to curl the finger of your hand in the sense of current. So as seen by you from this side, this is Z, this is Y, and the current in this loop is clockwise. Visualize it. It's going here. So if you are looking from this side, as seen by you, the current in this loop is clockwise. So curl the fingers of right hand clockwise, your thumb point towards left. When your thumb point towards left, it means that the direction is towards negative x. So you will write the area vector as magnitude a square and direction minus I cap, game over. Hence, we can say that the magnetic moment of this square loop carrying current I is nothing but I a square minus I cap. The number of turns 1, so not written. The current is I and the area vector is a square times minus I cap. To determine the direction of area vector, we use the right hand thumb rule. Just curl the finger of right hand in the sense of current in the loop. So without wasting time, let's move on to the next beautiful thing, which is the magnetic field produced by a current carrying wire. So now we will talk about Oester's observation. Oester observed that if we have a current carrying wire, then in the region surrounding it, it produces a magnetic field. And these magnetic field lines are in the form of concentric circular loops. Now, to determine the direction of magnetic field lines produced by a current carrying wire, we again use the right hand thumb rule. And in magnetism, direction is the most important thing. So first thing we are going to practice is how to identify the direction of magnetic field produced by a current carrying wire. It's very easy. All you need to do is, the direction of magnetic field can be found using the right hand thumb rule, right hand is really important. Now, align the thumb of right hand in the direction of current. Align the thumb of right hand in the direction of current. So in this case, you can see that the current is going upward. And then the magnetic field lines curl in the sense of rotation of finger. So if you align the thumb of your right hand in upward direction, how will your fingers curl from the open position? So sir, the finger curls this way. In the same way, the magnetic field lines will curl around the current carrying wire. And this is what can be seen in the diagrams. So let's see some examples to identify the direction of magnetic field produced by a current carrying wire. So the first example goes like, if a current carrying wire carry current from west to east, okay, current in the wire is from west to east. What is the direction of magnetic field at a point below it? So visualize a current carrying wire carrying current from west to east, the direction of magnetic field at a point below it. So align the thumb of right hand in the direction of current and then curl your fingers. The way your finger curl, in the same way the magnetic field lines will be curling around this wire. So if your finger curls this way, the magnetic field lines will be curling this way. At a point above the wire, the field will be towards south, tangential to the curve. At a point to the south of the wire, the field will be downward. At a point below the wire, the field will be towards north. At a point north of the wire, the field will be upward, and you need to understand this. So if you have got a current carrying wire carrying current from west to east, visualize the magnetic field lines curling around the wire. They will form circular loops. They are asking you the direction of magnetic field at a point below the wire. So the tangent on this curve at a point below the wire will be towards north. So you will say that this is what the magnetic field lines will look like. So at a point below the wire, the field will be towards north. Sir, I haven't understood. We will practice this a lot. See the next example. The next example goes like, if a current carrying wire carries current upwards, what is the direction of magnetic field at a point north of the wire? So visualize a wire carrying current in upward direction. If a current carrying wire carries current in upward direction, then the magnetic field lines will curl around the wire, forming circular loops. So at a point to the north of the wire, the direction of field will be towards west. At a point to the west of the wire, the direction of field will be towards south. At a point to the south of the wire, the direction of field will be towards east. At a point to the east of the wire, the direction of magnetic field will be towards north. Okay, so visualize the magnetic field lines surrounding this current carrying wire. So if the current carrying wire carries current in upward direction, what will be the direction of magnetic field at a point north of the wire? That is our mission. So visualize the magnetic field lines that will be created by this current carrying wire here, and they will be circular loops. So from the right hand thumb rule, you can get the sense of curl of the magnetic field lines. So they are going and forming a circular loop. At a point to the north of the wire, the direction of magnetic field will be tangential to the curve, and that will be towards west. So you will say that at a point to the north of the wire, the direction of magnetic field will be west. Let's practice more. Next example. If a current carrying wire carries current towards north, into the screen, what is the direction of field at a point above the wire? So now visualize that the current carrying wire carries current into the screen. What will be the direction of magnetic field at a point above the wire? So align the thumb of your right hand in the direction of current and then curl your fingers. The magnetic field lines will curl in the same way, the way your fingers curl. So you will say at a point above the wire, the field will be towards east. At a point to the east of the wire, the field will be down. At a point below the wire, the field will be towards west. At a point to the west of the wire, the field will be upward. So visualize the magnetic field lines produced in this case. You will say that at a point above the wire, the field due to this wire will be towards east, right? At a point below the wire, it will be towards west. At a point west of the wire, here and here, the field will be upward. At a point to the east of the wire, here and here, the field will be downwards, right? So you'll say at a point above the wire, the field is towards east. At a point above the wire, the field is towards east, to your right. Let's see the next example to understand better. Example goes like, if a positive charge has a velocity towards east, what is the direction of magnetic field at a point above it? The magnetic field created by the positive charge. So you will say that if a positive charge has got velocity towards east, okay, then I know how to find the direction of magnetic field due to current carrying wire. I don't know how to find the direction of magnetic field due to a moving charge. Better, rather than thinking of a moving charge, you can think of current carrying wire only. I have said it many a time. If positive charge goes towards right, current is towards right. If negative charge goes towards right, current is towards left, right. So rather than thinking of this positive charge going towards east, think of a current carrying wire carrying current towards east. So forget this and think of a current carrying wire carrying current towards east. Now, can you tell me what will be the direction of a magnetic field at a point above it? Sir, now this is easy. If a current carrying wire carries current towards east, then I will align the thumb of my right hand in the direction of current, and then I will curl my fingers. The way my finger curls, the same way the magnetic field lines will curl. So at a point north of this charge, the field will be upward. At a point above this charge, the field will be towards south. At a point south of this charge, the field will be downward. At a point below this charge, the field will be towards north. Think of the tangents on the curve at every point. So you will say that at a point above the positive charge, the magnetic field produced due to the motion of this positive charge will be towards south. Let's see one more example of this type where the charge is moving to understand better. Now let's say a negative charge has a velocity towards south. A negative charge has velocity towards south coming out of the screen towards you guys. What is the direction of magnetic field at a point on the east of it? So visualize that you have got a negative charge coming towards you. It has got velocity coming out of the plane of the screen towards you. So if the negative charge come towards you, you will say that I can think of it as a current carrying element having current in which direction? The current is in the direction of positive charge, opposite to the direction of motion of negative charge. So if the negative charge comes out of the screen, it means that you should visualize a current going into the screen. So rather than visualizing the negative charge, visualize that you have got a current carrying wire taking current into the screen. Now question is, what will be the direction of magnetic field on the east of it? So here you have got current carrying wire carrying current inwards. What will be the direction of magnetic field at a point east of it? Somewhere here. So you will say, I can visualize the magnetic field lines aligning my thumb in the direction of field, and then I will curl my fingers. Once I curl my fingers, I get these type of clockwise loop when I look at it. So at this point, the direction of magnetic field has to be downward. At a point to the east of the charge, the direction of magnetic field has to be downward. So you will say at a point east of the charge, the field is downward. So rather than thinking of charge, think of a current carrying wire. So till now, we have talked about the direction of magnetic field produced by current carrying wire. Now we are going to talk about its magnitude. What is the strength of the magnetic field? And the strength of magnetic field is given to us by the formula given by Biot-Savart's law. Now let's say you have got this random shaped current carrying wire. And if you think of one infinitely small length on this current carrying wire, let's say that infinitely small length is dl. What is the formula to write the magnetic field strength due to this infinitely small current carrying element at a point in space? Let's say you wish to write the strength of magnetic field at this random point, whose position vector with respect to this infinitely small current carrying element is given by r. So the formula says that the infinitely small strength of magnetic field formed by this infinitely small current carrying element is given by mu naught by 4 pi I dl cross r by r cube. Undoubtedly, this is the ugliest looking formula in physics. Now, you will say that what is this term mu naught? Mu naught is called permeability of free space, just like epsilon naught is called permittivity of free space. There is a beautiful value of 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught, and this beautiful value is nothing but 9 into 10 raised to the power of 9. Similarly, there is a beautiful value of mu naught by 4 pi. The value of mu naught by 4 pi comes out to be 10 raised to the power of minus 7 in the SI unit system. So if somewhere you need to substitute the value of mu naught, the value of mu naught will be nothing but 4 pi into 10 raised to the power of minus 7. So remember that mu naught by 4 pi. Again, a beautiful number is nothing but 10 raised to the power of minus 7. Now, if you do not like to write it in vector form and you just need the magnitude of the infinitely small magnetic field, so you will write the magnitude to be mu naught by 4 pi. In place of dl cross r, you will write dl into r into sine of the angle between them, sine theta, upon r cube. And here you have got one r in numerator, one r cube in denominator. Cancel it, you get r square in the denominator. So you can even write, when you are writing just the magnitude, dB equals to mu naught by 4 pi I dl sine theta upon r square. So this is the formula. Now here one thing is important. If dl and r are parallel, if dl and r are parallel, then their cross product will be 0. And since their cross product will be 0, the strength of magnetic field produced by them will be 0. So if you have got current carrying element and you try to find the strength of magnetic field due to this current carrying element at a point on the same line, let's say here, then dl and r will be parallel. Since dl and r will be parallel, the strength of magnetic field formed due to this current carrying element at a point on the same line will be 0. So keep this thing in mind. So if you have got a straight current carrying element, the field due to current carrying element at a point on the line is 0. So at any point on the same line, whether here or here or here or here, the strength of magnetic field produced by this current carrying element is going to be 0. So now let's use Biot-Savart's law to find some results. So first of all, we will find the field due to a current carrying loop at its center. Let's say we have got this current carrying circular loop and the current in this loop is going in the clockwise sense and the strength of current is I. We need to determine the strength of magnetic field at its center due to the current in the loop. How to do it? First of all, let's understand the direction of magnetic field. Think of one small element here. This element will produce magnetic field lines that will curl around this element. So at all these points, you can visualize a field due to this curling. Align the thumb of right hand in the sense of current, and the way your finger curl, in the same way the magnetic field line will curl. Due to this element, if you visualize the magnetic field, again the magnetic field line will curl around this element. So due to this element, the magnetic field lines will be something like this. Due to this element, the magnetic field line something like this. Due to this element, the magnetic field line something like this. So due to each and every element on this current carrying loop, the direction of magnetic field at the center will be in same direction, and that will be inward. So we know that due to one small part on this loop, the direction of magnetic field at the center of this loop will be inward. What if the current in the loop would have been anti-clockwise rather than clockwise? If the current in the loop will be anti-clockwise, then visualize the direction of magnetic field due to each and every element at the center. So if you visualize this element, because of it, the magnetic field line will form circular loop around the element, and at this point the direction of magnetic field will be outward. Similarly, due to this element where the current will be going down, again visualize the magnetic field line. So magnetic field line will be circular loops around this element. So when you visualize the magnetic field line due to this element, again the direction of magnetic field is outward. So similarly, due to each and every element on this circular loop, the direction of magnetic field at the center is going to be outward due to each and every element. Hence, if the current in the loop is anti-clockwise, the direction of magnetic field will be outward. You can use one more rule, that's called the knock-knock rule. What does the knock-knock rule says us? What does the knock-knock rule tells us? Curl the fingers of right hand in the sense of current in the loop. Curl the finger of right hand in the sense of current in the loop. The direction of thumb will give you both. First, the direction of magnetic moment. Second, the direction of magnetic field at the center. So if we visualize the first loop and curl the finger of right hand in the sense of current, which is clockwise, the direction of thumb gives us the direction of magnetic field at the center that will be going into the screen, as well as it will give us the direction of magnetic moment. Similarly, for this loop, if you curl the finger of right hand in the sense of current in the loop, which is anti-clockwise, The direction of thumb, which is coming out of the screen, will give you the direction of magnetic field at the center as well as the direction of magnetic moment. But the big question remains, what is the strength of this magnetic field produced by a current carrying loop at its center? So if you think here of an infinitely small length dl and think of the position vector of the point at which you are trying to find the magnetic field due to this infinitely small length dl. So you will say that the position vector of this point is nothing but the radius, radially inward point. Now, using the Biot-Savart's law, you can say that the infinitely small strength of magnetic field will be given by mu naught by 4 pi into I into dl into sine 90. Why sine 90? Because the angle between dl and the position vector of the center is 90 degree. Sine 90 upon r square, the distance whole square. Now sine 90 bachcho becomes 1. So on integrating both the side, you will say that integrating the infinitely small magnetic field from 0 to the full strength, and here mu naught by 4 pi I and sine 90 is 1 comes out, r is the radius of the circle, that is a constant, comes out, and the integration of dl gives you the overall length. What will be the overall length of this whole loop? So sir, integration of dl, integration of infinitely small length will give you the whole length of the loop, and the whole length of this loop is 2 pi r. So integrating dl from 0 to 2 pi r. After integrating and substituting limits, you get that the strength of magnetic field B equals to mu naught I by 4 pi r square, mu naught I by 4 pi r square multiplied by 2 pi r. Integration of dl gives you L. Substituting limit from 0 to 2 pi r, you get 2 pi r, cancel out 1 r with 1 r, and here 2 pi, here 4 pi, so you get a 2. So you get that the magnetic field strength comes out to be equals to mu naught I by 2r. So is this some result that I need to remember? Yes. If a circular loop of radius r carries a current I, then the magnetic field produced by it at its center is mu naught I by 2r. To get the direction of magnetic field, simply curl the fingers of right hand in the sense of current. If the current is clockwise, the magnetic field will be inwards. If the current is anti-clockwise, then the magnetic field will be outwards. So now we will talk about the magnetic field at the center due to a half ring and an arc. We know that due to a complete ring carrying a current I having a radius r, the strength of magnetic field at the center is given by mu naught I by 2r. But what if we have only half the ring? Then what will be the strength of magnetic field at the center? While deriving this result, I said that each and every element on the ring produces the magnetic field in the same direction. So if you remove half of them, let's say the lower half, the field strength at the center will become half. So the result is so easy. The strength of magnetic field at the center due to half ring is half the complete ring. So you will say that the strength of magnetic field will be mu naught I by 2r divided by 2. That is nothing but mu naught I by 4r. So remember that the strength of magnetic field at the center of a half ring is half the strength of magnetic field due to the complete loop, and that is mu naught I by 4r. Now the next part, what is the strength of magnetic field due to an arc carrying a current I if the arc subtend an angle theta at the center and the arc has a radius r? So visualize the arc carrying a current I having a radius r subtending an angle theta at the center. What will be the strength of magnetic field at the center due to this arc? So using unitary method, you can say that due to the complete loop which subtend an angle 2 pi at the center, the strength of magnetic field comes out to be mu naught I by 2r. So due to a part of it, an arc out of it, which subtend an angle theta at the center, the strength of magnetic field will be nothing but mu naught I by 2r multiplied by theta upon 2 pi. Such an easy job. So you will say that the strength of magnetic field will be nothing but mu naught I by 2r, that is the strength of magnetic field due to the whole loop multiplied by theta upon 2 pi. So when you solve it out, you simply get here B equals to mu naught I theta upon 4 pi r. If you have spent sufficient time with me, you will know that this theta has to be taken in radian. Whenever in any formula you find any theta, that theta must be taken in radian. So now let's move on and do some practice question based on the field produced due to a current carrying loop at its center. So the first question goes like, Here you can see two diagrams. In both the cases, the loop carry current I. The question is same for both the cases. The question is, find the magnetic field at the center in both the cases. So let's take both the cases one by one. In the first case, if in this bigger semicircle of radius 2r, the current is I, then the current must be moving in the loop. Now you can break down this first figure into four parts. A bigger semicircle, yes. A straight line, yes. A smaller semicircle, yes. And another straight line. Due to the two straight lines, the magnetic field at the center is going to be zero. Why? Because the center is at the same line as these two straight parts. We have learned that if you have a current carrying element, then at a point on the line of the element, the strength of magnetic field due to the current carrying element is zero. Now we need to write the net magnetic field at the center, and we need to write it just because of the two semicircular part. Due to the first semicircular part, the bigger one, we can tell that the direction of magnetic field has to be inward. Curl the fingers of right hand in the sense of rotation of current, and that will give you the direction of magnetic field at center from the knock-knock rule inward. And due to the second loop also, look at the sense of current, it is clockwise. So if you turn the fingers, you again get inward. So due to both the half, the direction of magnetic field is inward. We know that due to complete loop, the strength of magnetic field at center is mu naught I by 2r. So due to a half loop, the strength of magnetic field at center will be mu naught I by 4 times the radius of the semicircle. Now this bigger semicircle has radius 2r, while the smaller one has got radius r. So you will say that the strength of magnetic field will be, due to bigger semicircle, will be mu naught I by 4 times the radius of the semicircle, which is 2r, and due to the smaller semicircle, it will be mu naught I by 4 times its radius, that is r. So here you get, since both of them produce the field in the same direction, field is a vector quantity, you will simply add it up. And the result comes out to be mu naught I by 8r plus mu naught I by 4r, that is nothing but 3 mu naught I by 8r. Easy to do, and the direction has to be inwards. Now let's think of the second case. Again, you can break down this whole figure into 4 parts. The first part, the bigger semicircle. Second part, this is straight line. Third part, this semicircle. Fourth part, this is straight line. Due to the two straight lines, the magnetic field at center will be zero. So magnetic field at center will be present due to this smaller semicircle and due to the bigger semicircle. We need to understand the direction of current in the bigger semicircle. It will be here, going clockwise. So you will say due to the bigger semicircle, the direction of magnetic field at center will be inward. While due to the smaller semicircle, the direction of magnetic field will be outward. So you will say that the net magnetic field at center due to the two semicircles will be mu naught I by 4 times the radius of bigger semicircle inward plus mu naught I by 4 times the radius of smaller semicircle outward. So you will say that the net magnetic field will be in the direction of stronger field, and this mu naught I by 4r is double of mu naught I by 8r. So the net magnetic field will be in outward direction, and that net magnetic field will be mu naught I by 4r minus mu naught I by 8r, and you know that mu naught I by 4r minus mu naught I by 8r outwards means mu naught I by 8r outwards. That's how easy questions of magnetic field are. Let's practice more to understand better. Let's see the next example. Here you can see we have got an infinite grid of semicircles. So there is a semicircle of radius r. In this one, the current is going this way, then the current goes in straight line, then it goes anti-clockwise, then it goes in straight line, then it goes clockwise, then it goes in straight line, then it goes anti-clockwise, and this keeps on happening. Your job is to find the magnetic field at center if you get this type of infinite loops. The innermost semicircle has radius r, the second one 2r, the next one 4r, the next one 8r. So how to find the strength of net magnetic field at center? And these type of questions are easy. You just need to know what is the sum of an infinite GP. So first of all, tell me, if in this innermost loop the current is clockwise, then what is the direction of magnetic field at the center? So inward. Due to this second loop of radius 2r, what is the direction of magnetic field at center? Outward. Due to the third loop of radius 4r, what is the direction of magnetic field at center? Inward. Due to the fourth loop of radius 8r, what is the direction of magnetic field at center? Outward. So you can see that two consecutive loops keep on producing magnetic field in the opposite direction. So you will say that the net magnetic field at center will be due to each one of the semicircular part added up. So you will say that the net magnetic field at center will be due to the first semicircle of radius r mu naught I by 4r inward plus mu naught I by 4 times 2r outward plus mu naught I by 4 times 4r inward plus mu naught I by 4 times 8r outward and so on till eternity. Now taking the inward direction to be positive, I will treat the outward direction field as negative. So I will get the net magnetic field strength to be mu naught I by 4r minus mu naught I by 8r plus mu naught I by 16r minus mu naught I by 32r inwards, because I have taken the inward direction as positive. Now if you take mu naught I by 4r common, so what you get is mu naught I by 4r times 1 minus half plus 1 by 4 minus 1 by 8 and so on. And you should know what is the sum of an infinite GP. The sum of an infinite GP given by a plus ar square and so on up to infinity is nothing but a upon 1 minus r. Here your first term a is 1 and your common ratio, the common multiplier is minus half. So you get the magnetic field at center to be equals to mu naught I by 4r into a upon 1 minus r, and the r is minus half. So you get 1 upon 1 minus half, that becomes 1 upon 1 plus half, that becomes 1 upon 3 by 2, that is nothing but 2 by 3. So the magnetic field at center comes out to be mu naught I by 4r into 1 upon 3 by 2, and 1 upon 3 by 2 can be written as 2 by 3. So you get mu naught I by 4r into 2 by 3. You can cancel out this 2 and this 4 as well and get the answer as mu naught I by 6r. So now we will talk about the field due to finite line segment. If you have got a current carrying element of finite length, what is the strength of magnetic field due to this straight current carrying element at a random point in space? The drill goes like, drop a perpendicular from this point on the wire. Okay. Now join the two extremes of the wire with the point. And let's say the line joining the two extremes makes some angle theta 1 and theta 2 with the line of shortest distance. Then the formula goes like, the strength of magnetic field at this point whose distance from the line is r and the two angles are theta 1 and theta 2. So the formula of magnetic field goes like B equals to mu naught I by 4 pi r sin theta 1 plus sin theta 2, mu naught I by 4 pi r sin theta 1 plus sin theta 2, mu naught I by 4 pi r sin theta 1 plus sin theta 2. What is r? If you have this straight wire and let's say you wish to write the strength of magnetic field here. So drop the perpendicular and beta the shortest distance is r. So what is theta 1? Join the topmost point. This angle is theta 1. So what is theta 2? Join the lowest most point. This angle is theta 2. And the formula gives you that the strength of magnetic field is mu naught I by 4 pi r sin theta 1 plus sin theta 2. So let's see few examples to understand this better. Let's say I give you this case that you have got a finite length of wire. You drop the perpendicular, you get the distance r. When you join the topmost point, you get the angle of 60 degree. And when you join the lowest most point of the wire, you get the same line of shortest distance. So for this case, you will say that theta 1 is 60 degree while theta 2 is 0 degree. And the strength of magnetic field at this point will be nothing but mu naught I by 4 pi r sin 60 plus sin 0. Now sin 0 is 0. Sin 60 is root 3 by 2. So you simply get mu naught I by 4 pi r into root 3 by 2. That can be written as mu naught I by 8 pi r into root 3. Such an easy thing. So let's think of the second case. If on dropping the perpendicular, you find the angle with the both lines to be 60 and 30, you will say that the strength of magnetic field at this point due to this current carrying straight line will be nothing but mu naught I by 4 pi r sin 30 plus sin 60. Mu naught I by 4 pi r sin 30 plus sin 60. Now bachcho, sin 30 is half. Sin 60 is root 3 by 2. So you get mu naught I by 4 pi r into half plus root 3 by 2. And if from that half plus root 3 by 2, you take 1 by 2 common, what you get is mu naught I by 8 pi r 1 plus root 3. This is how easy it is. Before we do some problems, let's talk about two special cases using this particular formula. So special cases, the first case. What if the current carrying wire is infinitely large? So if you have got an infinitely large current carrying wire and you wish to find the field strength because of it at some distance r. So you will say, sir, if we try to join the topmost point, it is infinitely long. You will have to go technically straight up to infinity, and these two lines will meet at infinity. So what will be the value of theta 1? Sir, theta 1 will be 90 degree. This current carrying wire is infinitely large. So if you try to join it on the other side, again this angle is 90 degree. So you will say that theta 1 equals to theta 2 equals to 90 degree. So the strength of magnetic field at this point will be mu naught I by 4 pi r sine 90 plus sine 90. Now you know that sine 90 is 1, sine 90 is 1. So this becomes 1 plus 1, that is 2. So you get mu naught I by 4 pi r into 2, that becomes mu naught I by 2 pi r. Now remember that the magnetic field due to an infinitely long current carrying wire at a distance r from it is given by mu naught I by 2 pi r. Sir, what about the direction of magnetic field? Beta, that's the first thing I told you. Align the thumb of right hand in the sense of current and then curl the fingers. The way your finger curl, in the same sense, the magnetic field lines will curl, right? Now, this is the first case. The second case is if you have got semi-infinitely long wire. So, what is the meaning of semi-infinitely long wire? Which is infinitely long on one side but ends on the other side. Sir, you mean to say kind of a ray which terminates on one side but is infinitely long on the other side? Yeah, kind of that. So what will be the strength of magnetic field due to this semi-infinitely long wire at this point? So you will say, sir, now if you try to find the value of theta 1 and theta 2, for theta 1 you straight join it. So theta 1 comes out to be 0. And for theta 2 you have to go up to infinity to join. So you will keep on extending this line and this angle will be 90 degree. So theta 2, sir, has to be 90 degree. So you will say theta 1 equals to 0, theta 2 equals to 90, and the formula for magnetic field is V equals to mu naught I by 4 pi r sine 0 plus sine 90. Now beta, sine 0 is 0 and sine 90 is 1. So what you get is the strength of magnetic field to be mu naught I by 4 pi r. So due to infinitely long current carrying wire, the strength of magnetic field is mu naught I by 2 pi r, and due to semi-infinitely long, half the infinitely long, you get the strength of magnetic field to be half mu naught I by 4 pi r. So due to whole wire, infinitely long wire, mu naught I by 2 pi r, due to half of it, the strength of magnetic field is mu naught I by 4 pi r. It makes sense, right? Now, let's practice some question using the results we have learned till now. So here, the question goes like, determine the strength of magnetic field at the center in both the cases. Now here, you must treat these wires as infinitely long wires. So now, the first case. In the first case, you need to determine the strength of magnetic field at the center. You can break down this structure into three parts. The semi-infinitely long wire, the semi-circular wire, and then again a semi-infinitely long wire. Due to this first semi-infinitely long wire, the direction of magnetic field at this point, align the finger of right hand in the sense of current and then curl the finger. When you curl the finger, you will say that at this point the direction of magnetic field will be inward. Due to this semicircular part, again the direction of magnetic field inward. Due to this straight part, again the direction of magnetic field inward. So due to all three parts, at this point the direction of magnetic field is inward. The strength of magnetic field at this point due to this part will be mu naught I by 4 pi r. Due to this semicircular part, inward will be equals to mu naught I by 4r. Due to semicircle, you get mu naught I by 4r. Due to this semi-infinitely long part, you get mu naught I by 4 pi r. So you will say that the strength of magnetic field at center will be nothing but mu naught I by 4 pi r inward plus mu naught I by 4r due to semicircle inward plus mu naught I by 4 pi r due to this semi-infinitely long inward. So when all the magnetic field produced by all three parts is in same direction, you can take mu naught I by 4r outside. So what you get is mu naught I by 4r times 1 by pi from here, 1 by pi from here, 2 by pi plus 1. Now this is the answer to the first case. What will be the answer to the second case? You will say, sir, first case and second case are quite same. It's just that you have moved this third part and made it this way. Once you move it this way, now the magnetic field produced by it at the center will be 0 because now they are on same line. So in the second case, at the center, the field will be produced by only this semi-infinitely long part, this semicircular part, and no field due to this. So what has to be the result? You will say, sir, just look at these two parts and kick off the third part. That will be your answer. So the strength of magnetic field in the second case will be mu naught I by 4 pi r inward plus mu naught I by 4 r inward. You can take mu naught I by 4 r common. So what you get is mu naught I by 4 r times 1 by pi plus 1. This is how easy the questions are. Let's practice more questions for better understanding. Let's think of this question. You have got an equilateral triangle of side length A. And in this equilateral triangle, a current I is flown. The question is, determine the magnetic field due to the triangular loop at its center. So you need to think one by one. Due to this first wire, at this point, center, what will be the direction of field? So that will be inward. Due to this second wire, at the center, what will be the direction of field? So align the thumb of right hand in the sense of current and then curl your fingers. So you will again say inward. And due to this third wire, what is the direction of magnetic field at center? Inward. So you will say that due to all three parts, the direction of magnetic field at the center is inward. And we could have also said the direction of magnetic field at the center to be inward using the knock-knock rule. Now curl the finger of right hand in the sense of current, that is clockwise current. So the direction of magnetic field at center will be inward. Now due to symmetry, each part will contribute by the same amount to this magnetic field at the center. So due to all three parts of the loop, we get the same magnitude inward. Let's say that magnitude of magnetic field due to every part in inward direction to be B. All I need to do is I need to find the strength of magnetic field at the center due to any one of the part and then multiply it with 3. That will be my net magnetic field at the center. So the net magnetic field at center will be 3 times the strength of magnetic field produced by any one of them. Now visualize any one of them. Let's say I am visualizing the lowest one. So this lowest one has a length A. Yeah. We are not at all interested in the length of the wire. We are interested in finding the strength of magnetic field due to this wire at the center. And to find it, we need two things: the shortest distance and the angles, right? So can we find this shortest distance? So let's say this shortest distance is R. Can we determine these angles? Yeah, they are easy to determine. How? Drop the perpendicular, join these points. You know that for an equilateral triangle, this whole angle is 60. So this half angle has to be 30. Now looking into this right angle triangle, you can say that if this half angle is 30 degree, then this angle right here has to be 60 degree. So this angle right here has to be 60 degree. Now the strength of magnetic field at the center due to one part will be nothing but mu naught I by 4 pi r sine theta 1 plus sine theta 2. I know that theta 1 is 60, theta 2 is 60. I need to find out r. How to do it? Very easy. Looking into this right angle triangle, you will say that for this right angle triangle, this angle is 60 degree, this distance is r, this distance is a by 2. So I can say that tan 60 has to be perpendicular upon the base. So tan 60 has to be a by 2 upon r. So I can say that tan 60 equals to, which is root 3, equals to a by 2r, or rearranging it, I can say r equals to a by 2 root 3. So this shortest distance r is nothing but a by 2 root 3. Now use the formula mu naught I by 4 pi r sine theta 1 plus sine theta 2. So you will say that due to one of them, the strength of magnetic field will be mu naught I by 4 pi r, which is a by 2 root 3, into sine 60 plus sine 60. Sine 60 is root 3 by 2, so you get root 3 by 2 plus root 3 by 2, and you know that root 3 by 2 plus root 3 by 2 will give you root 3. So this whole part becomes root 3, and here you can move this 2 root 3 from the denominator of denominator to the numerator. So what you get is b equals to mu naught I, this 2 root 3 goes up upon 4 pi a, and this sine 60 plus sine 60 becomes root 3. Now beta, this root 3 and this root 3 multiply and become a 3. Here you have got a 2, here you have got a 4, so in denominator you get a 2. So B comes out to be equals to 3 mu naught I by 2 pi a. This is the strength of magnetic field due to only one of the side. We need to write the net magnetic field, which will be triple of this. So we will say that the net magnetic field has to be 3 times of 3 mu naught I by 2 pi a. That will be 9 mu naught I by 2 pi a. Let's practice one more question of same time. Now let's say rather than giving you an equilateral triangle, they have given you a square. A square of side length A which carries a current I. What will be the strength of magnetic field at the center of this square loop? So the same procedure. You will say that due to each part, the direction of magnetic field will be inward. Because of symmetry, each part will contribute the same to the net magnetic field at the center. So let's assume that due to each part, the strength of magnetic field is B and the net magnetic field at center has to be 4 times B, right? Now how to find B? Sir, simple. Think of only one part which carries current I. You know that if you join this part only to center, you need to know just two things, sir. The shortest distance R and the angles, right? Now these angles will be 45 and 45. Why? It's easy to understand. If you have a square and you join it, this whole angle is 90, so this is 45. When you drop a perpendicular, the remaining angle also have to be 45. And this length is super easy to know. It is A by 2, half the side length. So you already know what is R, A by 2. You know already what is the angle 45 and 45. You can use the formula B equals to mu naught I by 4 pi R, which is A by 2, into sine 45 plus sine 45. Now beta, sine 45 is 1 by root 2 plus 1 by root 2, 1 by root 2 plus 1 by root 2 gives you 2 by root 2 and 2 by root 2 gives you root 2. So what you get here is this 2 can cancel 1 here, you get a 2. So you get B equals to mu naught I by 2 pi a into sine 45 plus sine 45, which is root 2. Now this is the magnetic field due to one side. A square has got 4 sides. So the net magnetic field at center will be equal to, due to all the 4 sides, so multiply this data with 4. So you get 4 times of mu naught I by root 2 pi a, and that gives you 2 root 2 mu naught pi a. Easy? So now let's move on and see the next generalized case using which you will be able to answer all triangle, rectangle, pentagon, any case. So if you have a general n-sided regular polygon in which one side has a length A and the polygon carries a current I, then what will be the strength of magnetic field at the center of the polygon? So your mission is determine the magnetic field at the center of an n-sided regular polygon carrying a current I having a side length A. So you need to write the magnetic field at the center due to one of the side and then multiply it with n. So just visualize one of the side. Now if the whole polygon subtend a combined angle of 2 pi at the center, then one of the side will subtend an angle of 2 pi by n at the center. Once you drop the perpendicular and you join both the sides, then the angle of one part will be half of 2 pi by n. So this angle right here will be pi by n. So I know already the angle pi by n both the side. Now all I need to know is r. How to know r? Just look into one of the right angle triangle here. You will say that this angle here is pi by n. Yes, sir. This distance is r. Yes, sir. And this half distance will be a by 2. So you can say that tan pi by n has to be equals to a by 2 upon r. Tan pi by n equals to perpendicular upon the base. So we know that tan pi by n equals to a by 2 upon r. Once you know this, you can find out r and rewrite r as a upon 2 tan pi by n. Bring this tan pi by n down, so you get a by 2 tan pi by n. Now once you know r, once you know the angle, game over. You will say that the magnetic field due to one of the side at center will be given by mu naught I by 4 pi times r, which is nothing but a upon 2 tan pi by n, multiplied by sine theta 1 plus sine theta 2, sine pi by n plus sine pi by n, and that gives you 2 sine pi by n. Now you can bring this 2 tan pi by n from denominator of denominator to the numerator. So you will see that once this 2 goes up, the 2, 2 and the 4 get cancelled. So what you get is mu naught I by 2 pi a, mu naught I by 2 pi a, cancel this 2 and 2. And this tan pi by n goes up, multiplied by 2 sin pi by n. So the 2 and 2 get cancelled, and what you get is b equals to mu naught I by pi a into sin pi by n into tan pi by n. This is the magnetic field due to one side. Due to all the n side, the strength of magnetic field at center will be n times. So the strength of magnetic field net at the center will be n times of mu naught I by pi a into sin pi by n into tan pi by n. Now you know the generalized result. Let's see some more important cases before we close this R. This question is a simple question. Here you can see that rather than asking the magnetic field at the center of a square loop due to the current flowing through it, here we have got two more attached arms. And your mission is to determine the strength of magnetic field at the center of this square loop, given that from here a current I enters and from here a current I exits. Now you will say that, sir, here in totality I can think of 6 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Now since these two have the center on their line, because of these two there will be no magnetic field at the center. Now the magnetic field will be at the center because of these 4 parts, right? Now if this square loop is made up of uniform material and current enters from here and exits from here. So if the current enter here I, will same amount of current will go in both the branches? No. If this single branch has a resistance R, then these 3 branches which are in series will have a combined resistance of 3R. Since the resistance of this parallel branch to R is triple, the current flowing in it will be 1/3. So if the current going here is X, the current going here will be X by 3, and you can say that X plus X by 3 has to be equals to I, so 4X by 3 has to be equals to I, so X has to be equals to 3I by 4. So the current flowing through this arm will be 3I by 4 and current flowing through this arm will be I by 4. Now let's say this current of I by 4 produces a magnetic field B inwards, then this one will also carry the same current, is at same distance, have the same angle, it will also produce magnetic field B inward. And this third part will also produce magnetic field B inward. But this part which has 3 times the current will on its own produce a magnetic field of 3B outwards. So sir, what are you trying to say here? The magnetic field produced by these 3 parts inward combinedly will have the same strength as the magnetic field due to this single part outward. So the net magnetic field at center is going to be 0. Due to these two, it's already 0. The point lies on the same line. Due to these 4 also, it becomes 0 because the current get distributed in the ratio opposite to the resistance. So this line is longer, it has got more resistance, it has got lesser current. It is 3 times longer, it has got 3 times more resistance. So it will get 1/3 the current compared to the other line. So each line here will produce a magnetic field of strength 1/3 compared to the other one. So these 3 will let's say produce B inward, and the fourth one will produce a 3B outward. So the net magnetic field at the center is going to be 0. Let's think of the next case. Question is, find the magnetic field at the center of the loop. The same type of question. So you will say due to these 2 straight parts, the magnetic field at the center will be 0. Once the current I comes, it gets divided into 2 parts, I by 2, I by 2. The upper semicircle produces a magnetic field in inward direction, while the lower semicircle produces a magnetic field in the outward direction. So what is the net magnetic field at the center? 0. Because these 2 parts have the same length, they have the same resistance, so same amount of current I by 2 will go in them. So you will say the net magnetic field at center will be 0 because these 2 parts will cancel out each other's magnetic field. Do not think that this is one complete loop. For this to be one complete loop, if in the upper part the current goes this way clockwise, then in lower part it should be in the same way clockwise, right? But in the lower part you can see that the current is going anti-clockwise. So these two semicircle cancel out each other's magnetic field. So you will say that the net magnetic field at center has to be 0. Let's think of another case. Let's say they give you this case. Now here you can see that you have a circular loop, and in this circular loop current enters from here and the current exits from here. Your mission is to find the magnetic field at the center. Again, you can bring down this circular loop with the two connecting wire into 4 parts. The first part, the second part, the third part and the fourth part. Due to these two parts, there will be no net magnetic field at the center, right? Now, we need to understand due to these two parts. Now, it's the same case as that of the square. When the current I approaches here, it gets divided into 2 parts. Some part goes here, some part goes here. This lower part has got 3 times the length. So it has got 3 times the resistance. If it has got 3 times the resistance, only 1/3 of the current will flow through it compared to other one. So if only 1/3 current will flow through it compared to other one, if the current going here is X, current going here will be X by 3. And you can say that X plus X by 3 has to be equals to I. So 4X by 3 has to be equals to I. So X has to be equals to 3I by 4. So the current going through this quarter will be 3I by 4, while the current going through the other 3/4 part will be only I by 4. But do understand, it has got 3 times the length. So 3 times the element, producing each element's magnetic field of 1/3 the strength. So the net magnetic field again at center is going to be 0. Due to these two parts, it is going to be 0 because the center lies on the same line. And because of this part and this part, understand that this bigger part has got 3 times the length, no doubt. It subtends 3 times the angle at the center, no doubt. But it has got 1/3 the current. So this quarter part and this 3/4 part produce the magnetic field of same strength in opposite direction. That's why the net magnetic field at center will be 0. Similarly, you can even answer these two cases. So if you have got some current entering here and current exiting here, and here I have given you some random angle theta rather than giving you 180 degree or rather than giving you 90 degree. So remember that even for any generalized angle theta, the current divides in the ratio inverse of the length. The greater the length, the greater the resistance, the greater the resistance, the lesser the current. So kind of the length times the current flowing through it is constant for both of them. So these two straight parts produce no magnetic field at center, and these two parts cancel out each other's magnetic field at the center. So even in this case, when you have a ring and the current exits at one point and enters at one point, no matter the choice of angle theta, the net magnetic field at center is going to be 0. But be cautious about the orientation of these connecting wires because sometimes they play with it. They might give you a case like this. Now, in this case, due to this wire through which the current exits, there is no magnetic field at the center because it's on the same line. But due to the line from which the current enters, now at the central point, the field is not 0. So think of the semi-infinitely long wire and this point, and this time this semi-infinitely long wire will produce a magnetic field at this point, and that magnetic field will be mu naught I by 4 pi r. As for these two parts, the current divides in the ratio inverse of their length, so the strength of field produced by both the parts will be same and they cancel out each other's field. So you will say that the net magnetic field at center in this case is only due to this semi-infinitely long wire, and that is equals to mu naught I by 4 pi r. So that's all in this hour. In the next hour, we will talk about solenoid, toroid, ACL and few more important things that you should know in this chapter. See you guys in next hour. Bye bye. So that's all for now. See you guys in the next hour.